The following podcast may contain adult language and conversations revolving around situations not suitable for immature audiences. Spoilers and general political incorrectness can often be expected, so listener discretion is advised.
They must be destroyed on sight!
All right, we're back. They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode, I believe we're 62 now? Yeah, 62.
I think Stranger was 61, so,
Yeah.
Sure, 62.
62 official episodes now. We've been sort of on hiatus for 2 weeks, sort of. I am your host, Lee Russell, and I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel Harper. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing just great. Thanks for asking.
Awesome.
I don't have a funny joke for that today. I never have a funny joke, but sometimes I have like an amusing little thing. But
yeah, I really count on you for bad jokes, and you couldn't even provide a bad joke after 2 weeks.
I didn't even tell a terrible joke about the Facebook group because I haven't been on our Facebook group that much lately, and I feel really bad about that because
that's all right.
Pushing traffic towards this wonderful Facebook group that we have, and then at least tell a little joke about it, and then I don't.
It's all right. No one's been on our Facebook group for the last 2 weeks, so it's okay.
Yeah. Apparently, we're shitty podcast hosts and refuse to actually put out content for our listeners.
Yeah. Well, once you get people into the cycle of a podcast a week, they start expecting stuff, and then when you don't provide it, they just throw you away. Disposable garbage.
Yeah, they're no longer interested in anything we have to say. It's just if you dance for me, monkey, or else you're gone. That's pretty much the way our audience treats us. So
I still appreciate our audience. The 1 or 2 people who are probably still listening at this point. Thank you very much.
Yeah, people that I know personally and pay personally to watch this to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, all the people who are on the other side of the paywall, getting the exclusive content that all you other plebes don't get.
Exactly.
Goddamn, we need a paywall.
You know what I hate, Lee? The post office. Stamps.com.
Check out our podcast on audibletrial.com. Yeah, no, fuck that.
Go to squarespace.com for your free trial.
Yeah, they can make a goddamn website for you, bitches. Yeah. Paul may or may not join in. He was talking to me about trying to join in on his phone, so if he pops in, he will pop in, but otherwise we're just going to go on, and hopefully he can sort out his shit. If he doesn't show up this week, hopefully next week.
I'm looking forward to talking to Paul. I don't talk to Paul anymore unless I only talk to Paul professionally on this show.
Paul has cut off most of his social media contacts at this point. He is very exclusive now. He's exclusive content. If you go past the paywall, you will get more Paul, but otherwise it's not going to happen. But yeah, we're back. We're still doing our little bit of a sci-fi break. We still got one more episode in this sort of little sci-fi break that we're going to do. It's not going to happen next week because I have to work next week a lot. So it's probably going to be a week after this, unless we can maybe do it on Wednesday. I don't know if we can work that out or not, but
we could probably work something out.
Okay, well,
we'll talk about it not on the air.
Yeah.
Because I know you wouldn't edit it out. We can have that conversation later.
Yeah, I just don't want to promise things to the listeners because I know we do actually.
I will commit to, if Lee cannot get an episode out, I will put out an intermission episode for Lee.
Okay, well, good because we do joke around, but we do know we do have an audience and we appreciate them. So we do try to get something out every week when we can.
I'm going to do a personal discussion of the Devil and Miss Jones Resurrection 2010 film with Belladonna.
Okay.
I'm not actually. I might for you fuckers. We'll see.
Well, you should do it because no one ever fucking mentioned Belladonna when we did Inherent Vice.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to do a full review of a Belladonna film.
Yeah, I was actually disappointed, honestly, that no one actually mentioned anything but the Belladonna stuff because we kind of went in depth in that, and it's like, whatever. It doesn't matter.
I discussed in detail my love of her ass licking, and then just it went nowhere. You know, I really thought we were going to get some attention for that, but
no one appreciates anything anymore. I blame the Rialto report for.
No one appreciates a good description of a rum job, is what I'm saying.
Jesus Christ, are all of our fans Puritans? What is going on here? No. Oh shit! I even hate myself for saying fans, listeners. God damn it! I sound like one of those fucking. I sound like one of those fucking podcast assholes who say all of our fans. Fuck you, you fucking pieces of shit. It's our listeners, and they
you know who we love. That they must be destroyed on a site army out there. Yeah. Listening to us, building a movement that's really going to change the world of film discussion.
The TMBDOSers out there. You're great. You're great. It's awesome. It's going to be huge.
They're going to give a big sloppy blowjob to every single one of you.
I'm telling you, they're going to be huge. They're going to be great. They're going to make America great again. It's going to be the best. God damn.
Don't get me started on Donald Trump. Not on this show. On my other show.
Yeah. We'll keep the politics to Oi Space, man.
Fair enough.
Okay, so we do have 2 comments. I'll get to the short one first. I just put out a question on the actual Facebook site, TMBDOS on Facebook. If you want to find us, they must be destroyed on site. Best place to get in contact with us. Hunter Dusing said, "Don't forget to pack the Mr. Pibb. It's the only Coke I like," which is a good reference, and I applaud him, sir.
It is a good reference. I appreciate that. And I don't know, Mr. Pibb or Dr. Pepper? Like, which do you have a preference there, Lee?
I've never had Mr. Pibb. I don't think that's a thing in Canada. I've never seen it. So
it's not that common in the States. I mean, I think it's like pockets of popularity. But I've had it. I've got to say I prefer Dr. Pepper.
I was going to say I prefer Dr. Pepper Cherry is the one I like.
I don't know that I've had the Dr. Pepper Cherry.
That might be a Canada-only thing.
I don't really like cherry-flavored things in general. Okay. Like cherry flavor. Like it might exist. I know I've had like vanilla Coke and cherry Coke. I don't know that I've had Dr. Pepper. I don't drink a lot of soda these days. But
yeah, I don't either because it's incredibly bad for you. And don't do it, kids. I would recommend people take up smoking before they drink pop, honestly. But
okay, that's probably not the case. But drinking maybe, but not smoking.
No, come on, take up cigars, kids. Let's do it.
Maybe marijuana, not cigarettes.
Yeah, not marijuana. Go ahead. I'm actually constantly surprised, like, the differences between junk food between Canada and the U.S. Ketchup chips is, like, almost non-existent in the U.S., apparently. But ketchup chips is, like, a big thing in Canada.
Yeah, that must be... Yeah, I've never seen ketchup. I mean, I don't know, maybe I've seen them, like, some specialty shop somewhere, but, like, it's not a thing.
The differences in snack foods between Canada and the U.S. is, like, a whole other podcast, but, yeah.
Are we going to talk about movies today, or are we just going to ramble on? I'm fine either way. I kind of like the off-topic nature of today. This is what happens when Lee and I don't get to chat personally for 2 weeks, is we just, like, bullshit.
Well, again, I've never had Mr. Pibb. I don't even know what that is. Apparently that's a cola, Mr. Pibb. Is that?
Mr. Pibb is basically, because Dr. Pepper is like independent, right?
Yeah.
Like, Dr. Pepper isn't Coke or Pepsi. Mr. Pibb is, I believe it's Coke's like version of Dr. Pepper.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So it's sort of like their formulation that's supposed to taste more like Dr. Pepper.
Oh, okay.
It's fizzy sugar water. Like, what do you want? It's just sort of like people that get really like up in arms about like soda flavors, I mean, this is a multinational corporation that has like focus grouped a particular brand of fizzy sugar water to death and is selling it in millions of locations around the world, specifically to turn a half-cent profit per can. I mean, this is not anything that like you should concern yourself with. Ultimately,
I mean,
I actually admire the food scientists that like design these things and make out consistent batches, much more so than I actually respect the product itself.
Well, when you think about it, coming from both our sort of backgrounds in sort of online beer critique and everything, it's like listening to some asshole argue between Coors Light and Bud Light or something like that. Like,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are just other things to talk about, like
movies.
Like movies. Also giant corporate products, but at least there is some artistic integrity behind them,
Yeah.
And there are more than 6 of them that you can try.
Great. All right, so a little long time getting to this. This was an email sent to me on May 14th. This is from Andrew Koch, or perhaps it's Cook. I never know because the way it's
one
spelled.
of the Koch brothers. One of the Koch brothers has messaged us.
It's
the Koch brothers, it's the Koch brother, the third brother with integrity.
Yeah. But if
get in on the family fortune and decided he wanted to message, he really just wanted to make his political influence known through this podcast.
Yeah.
And so he sent us a message.
And here we go. So Andrew says, I've been listening to your podcast for approximately the last 6 months after hearing about you on the Midnight Movie Cowboys podcast. Shout out to the Midnight Movie Cowboys. Thank you. You provided some needed entertainment while I'm going through the drudgery of work. After hearing your podcast on 2001: A Space Odyssey in 2010, I thought I would send along an email with a link to an extremely in-depth article on the meanings of the movie. And that's a bit of understatement, sir, because that article is fucking long. That's a book.
I did not. I meant to download it. I read through the majority of it, and then just I'm kind of doing it in stages. I meant to download it and do an actual word count on it, but I haven't bothered to do it yet. But it's in excess of 50,000 words. I mean,
yeah,
it goes through beat by beat through the entire film 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Are you going to throw a link in the show notes to this? So
I am,
can look
definitely.
At themselves? Okay. Overall, I find it interesting. I think it's probably misreading Nietzsche slightly. I can't tell if it's misreading Nietzsche slightly or it's responding to someone who's misreading Nietzsche slightly. I'm not a Nietzsche scholar, but I know enough to kind of know that the Übermensch doesn't quite mean what he's kind of implying it to mean, but I haven't gotten to the end yet, so I don't know how he's going to wrap it all up. And I do think that this thing is much, much longer than it really needs to be. The thesis statement could be, it's padded. It feels padded, but it's online Kubrick scholarship, which is ultimately always to this kind of very obsessively detailed length. And some of the arguments are definitely stronger than others. I'll just say that. But if you want to go through that, maybe I'll sit down and go through it one of these days. So,
Well, I mean, going through the whole thing would be just another podcast on itself. And honestly, I don't think I'm intellectually equipped enough to go through everything on that. I was reading it tonight, and I'll admit I should have read it 2 weeks ago when he first sent the fucking email, and I apologize, Andrew, for that. So I'm not giving it the full respect it deserves, but I did read through it tonight, fairly buzzed. So there you go. I found it quite interesting. I think the end of it is much more interesting than the beginning and middle, where he starts talking about Hal. And
I don't think the argument is wrong necessarily, in its broad, but I think that some of the evidence is a little weak, and some of it is based on an interpretation of certain moments. In particular, he draws a lot of conclusions on the argument that Bowman's drawing to Hal is not very good. And it seems to be this moment to where he's drawing a lot of psychological depth out of that, where I don't think that that's obviously that's a reading of the film, but I don't know that the links that he has to push to on top of that, I don't think are justified by the text itself. If that's
sort of what I was sort of skimming from it. That I felt like there was a lot of stuff in here that really, just from my interpretation, was not implied really by Kubrick at all.
But I think that there is this kind of new criticism, death of the author thing, where it doesn't matter really what Kubrick intended. It's kind of what you read in the text. And so I'm willing to go with that. I think that even judging on that basis, I think there is a degree to which some of the arguments are weaker than others. And I think I agree in kind of the broad thrust, kind of where he's going, and I think there is some interesting stuff. But I think it's kind of buried in this kind of pile of that's fine. You know, like it's just kind of no, all right, I guess I can go with that. But I really wish that the author had like picked the like 4 things he most wanted to talk about, and then like pushed on those buttons instead of like detailing everything in the film.
Yeah, because he really goes into everything. Like he is talking about every aspect of the film and its significance to the overall theme. Like he's going through the music like step by step almost. Like
some of the music stuff is actually interesting.
It is,
in terms of the way he's talking about the Ligeti theme versus the Blue Denim Waltz and some of that stuff. So I found some of the way that he talked about the music interesting. I mean, it's an interesting piece, at least on the like go and look at how this works.
Yeah.
Go and look at the depth of like if you haven't read Kubrick scholarship before, this is a kind of the online fandom of Kubrick. This is definitely a really fine example of that.
Yeah, I won't go into too much depth, but I will say the most interesting part I found was the stuff talking about Hal, and how in the initial film he talks about how Hal is sort of striving to become more human, and then how basically he's just corrected in the second film, and all that is washed away as a plot contrivance almost, right? I thought some of that stuff was pretty strong. And honestly, I am going to read this a couple more times and go through it and try to see what I think about it. I don't know necessarily if I'll talk about it on the podcast, but thank you very much, Andrew, for...
bonus content for our Patreon subscribers.
Yeah.
I will talk about this article in depth.
You only have to pay $15 a month, and you'll get exclusive content from They Must Be Destroyed on Site. Yeah, never going to happen. But he also says, I was also wondering if you guys would ever think about doing Straw Dogs. I would love to hear Daniel's thoughts on that. Anyways, keep up the good work. And I think we're both in agreement that we'll do Straw Dogs at some point.
Rape and fascism? I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely my wheelhouse. This is a film I would... And astrophysics. I mean, come on. Like these are 3 topics that I can... speak, and English pubs. I actually don't know a lot about English pubs, but there's an English pub.
I'm thinking a Sam Peckinpah month is in order at some point anyway. So
yeah, I'm actually undereducated in my Sam Peckinpah. I haven't seen as many of his films as I'd like, so I would absolutely love to do some of those films and kind of actually sit down and watch some stuff that I haven't seen. So yeah, I'm down. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Straw Dogs, yeah, that is a brilliant and deeply problematic film. Like, I mean, it just is, So that's all I'll say for now. Obviously, but I love that he's like, I'd love to hear what Daniel has to say about Straw Dogs.
I think he picked up on some of the sort of overarching themes that you sort of talk about on this podcast. So yeah,
I think so. It is always interesting whenever someone says, "I'm interested to see what Daniel has to say about this terrible, terrible moment." Of course, Daniel's gonna talk about this, So.
Never mind that asshole Lee who doesn't talk about anything important and this sort of...
No, everybody loves you. I'm the heel of this podcast. People hate me. People listen just to see that me, like, bringing my, social justice agenda into their lives. That's kind of how I see people's response to me on this podcast. Nobody actually wants to listen to me. People want to listen to you and Paul when Paul finally gets his ass back on here. People are going to rejoice. And then I'm going to talk, and then they're just going to fast forward through it. That's just,
Oh, fuck. But yeah, thank you for the comments, guys. Again, go to They Must Be Destroyed on Site on Facebook. It's the best place to get in contact with us. We will respond to anything you send us, even if this is just bullshit. Like, we have nothing but time to fill on the air here. So, I mean, if you have...
Obviously.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about fucking Dr. Pepper a minute ago. Like, God damn it.
Yeah. We have nothing better to talk about than Dr. Pepper. Clean, refreshing Dr. Pepper. Mm-hmm. Really, it's the drink of champions, Lee.
It won't rot your enamel as much as Coke and those other guys. Probably. I don't know.
Taste the phosphoric acid.
Yeah. Jesus. Okay, so we should just move on to what we've watched in the last little while, and I'll let you go first there, Daniel. So go ahead.
Sure. I watched a few things, just kind of idly on Netflix that I wouldn't want to like pretend I discuss, like kind of really looked into. I rewatched South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut because it was on Netflix, and man, I loved that film when I was 19, and holy shit, has it not aged all that well? It's the songs are great. I mean, like it's still the same movie it was. It kind of falls apart in its last third. And holy shit, is this a movie made by like privileged 25-year-old white guys? Like really upset that they can't say naughty words in a movie. Like, man, there are no bigger problems in the world than your ability to say, fuck-a-doodle in a movie. Congratulations, guys. Well done. But it's still funny. It was fun to rewatch. Let's see. I watched a lot of like little bits of stuff here and there. I watched like the first half of Pulp Fiction. Mm-hmm. I haven't watched Pulp Fiction in a long time, and one of these days we're gonna start talking about Tarantino, I think. Yeah. But I think I'll kind of save detailed thoughts till then. But like kind of watching it outside of its context, kind of watching it today and kind of like seeing it with fresh eyes to some degree. Respect from that film, which I already loved, but my respect for it just as a film just like skyrocketed again. Like it's such a well-made piece of cinema. It's so effective at what it does. Like even though I know every beat in the film, like coming back to it and going like, yeah, I mean, my feeling on Tarantino is that he's his leader career is more interesting because he's more interested in kind of talking about politics and ideology and such, and like kind of pointing fingers at dirty places that we don't like to talk about. And in his first couple of films, he doesn't do that at all. I mean, it's really just kind of making pretty straightforward crime films. I mean, Pulp Fiction is him learning the tools of his trade so he could then go on to make the more sophisticated films. But my God, does it work just as a piece of pure cinema, and that's all it's meant to be. And I think that's something that really still holds up, at least the first half. So because I was just kind of watching it idly again, and went to bed because I was drinking and needed to sleep.
Yeah, he doesn't really, in my mind, in my estimation anyway, he doesn't really graduate, I guess, is the best term, to like a mature filmmaker till he gets to Jackie Brown, where he really starts to talk about stuff. I think his early couple films are these are all the cool things I saw when I was working in that fucking video store. This is all the cool stuff that I wanted to rip off and put in my own crime films and educate other people who've probably never seen these fucking films, because he comes from a sort of a culture where a lot of this stuff might have been on VHS, but a lot of people never fucking saw it before he started, showing it to people. Of course, there's also the problem that Tarantino didn't quite disclose that, oh yeah, I kind of took this from this film and this from this film. Some people had to point that out for him, but I think we'll get more into that when we talk about Tarantino at some point. But
right. I mean, to me, and here's where I land on Tarantino, just bottom line. I think that playing the reference game with Tarantino, like I understand in the first couple of films, I understand the City on Fire argument. Like I get that, and I get that, like there are a lot of like you can take shots, the Kiss Me Deadly, shot in Pulp Fiction. You can get all the other stuff and kind of say, oh, we just ripped this off from other films, but he's putting it together in a new way. I mean, by that argument, any like musical artist that uses sampling is not. I mean, there's bad sampling and good sampling, and there's good kind of like using a reference, and then there's bad using a reference. And I don't know. Regardless of how you feel about those first two films, I think you and I are both in agreement that like once he gets to Jackie Brown, he's starting to tell stories, like real human stories, and not just kind of playing with cinematic tropes. I still think Pulp Fiction works. I still think that's a film that really moves.
I agree. It's not one of my favorite of his, but I definitely agree it works, and I do respect what it kind of did for film at its time. Yeah,
Reservoir Dogs. Yeah, I mean, I've actually seen it on the big screen. I got a chance to see it. Michael Madsen was in Kalamazoo.
Oh, really?
And he soon after the Alamo opened here, they got Michael Madsen in, and he did like a little. they did 2 showings of Reservoir Dogs, and he was supposed to do a Q&A after the movie, but I came to the second showing, and they let him do it before the movie just because it was like, Michael Madsen doesn't want to sit here for another 90 minutes. I mean, in Kalamazoo, Michigan, I get it. Like, there's no complaint there.
Listen, Michael Madsen's too busy doing 18 fucking direct-to-video movies next month, so he doesn't need to be sitting here at the Alamo wasting his time.
He was about the way you'd expect. He told some funny stories about like making Reservoir Dogs for about 15 minutes, and he looked really old. I mean, it's just somebody even asked him about the Vega Brothers movie that he's like, well, if Quentin came to me and said I want to do it, I'd do it. But like, I'm like, no, you guys are like, nobody wants to see you guys do this movie at this point.
No, not at this point, no.
Tarantino is not going to take 2 years out of his life and make this film. Like, it's just never going to happen. Yeah. But, anyway. One more movie I'll mention. I watched The Psychopath, which was one of the Amicus films. This is kind of the lost Amicus film. It's a little bit hard to find. Apparently, the only real DVD release was an Italian release or something like that. From so it's kind of a. I torrented it. I found it fairly readily, but apparently it's for some people it's a little bit kind of hard to dig up. It's actually written by Robert Bloch, who was the writer of the novel that Psycho is based on. Yeah. And I haven't read the novel that Psycho is based on, but this kind of rips completely off the Psycho formula.
It does.
And not necessarily in a bad way. I found it to be actually pretty entertaining. I think structurally it actually improves on the Psycho formula to some degree. Because it kind of adds a little bit of I don't want to say add psychological complexity, but I think that what makes Psycho work is really Hitchcock and not Bloch. Whereas I think The Psychopath kind of works like it isn't directed as well. I mean, it's a fairly kind of low budget B grade psychological horror film, but effective at what it does. I was not bored watching it, and I think that it really does kind of lend itself. The ending is interesting, So I watched it, I enjoyed it, and honestly, now that I'm talking about it, because I watched it like a couple of weeks ago at this point, I'm kind of like I've forgotten some of the details just because it's just that kind of film. But I enjoyed the film, and I would recommend people kind of seek it out and give it a watch. It's actually worth a relook if you already look. I think it's kind of most people haven't seen it, but this is from 1966 and worth it.
Yeah, I would actually recommend people see it too. It's actually a pretty good film. You're right, it is one of those sort of Amicus films that no one thinks about, because when people think about Amicus, they think about their anthologies. And
I'm watching along with the City of the Dead podcast. So
I was about to say, I'm actually going to link to City of the Dead podcast in the show notes for this episode, because I recommend people go back and see what they're talking about, because they're highlighting all these films from Amicus, even the really terrible ones, like the Killer
They're doing everything in order. So,
yeah.
Is this a good time? Should I bring this up? City of the Dead is now as part of the Original Press podcast blogging family, and as of this week, I am as well. So it could be a conflict of interest, et cetera, et cetera. I've loved this podcast since episode 1. James and Holly are both personal friends of mine. They do a great show, and I've said that on this podcast long before. Just so people know, I'm writing a column about sex. My wife and I are kind of co-doing a column about sex on originalpress.com that will be up every Friday until one of us gets bored of it or something. So, or until Phil fires us, which will probably happen. So, go check that out.
Yeah, we'll link that in the show notes, and we'll put that on the Podbean page as well. We'll get that all linked up. But yeah, City of the Dead from the Pex Lives podcast is awesome. I just love that they're doing the Amicus films, because I've never really seen anyone really talk about the Amicus stuff all that much, except for the fucking anthologies. So this is really great to see them going in order, going through stuff. And of course, also they're doing westerns now. Pex Lives.
Pex Lives is doing westerns. So that's the kind of Doctor Who side where they do Doctor Who, but they're explicitly they do 4-hour podcasts at this point. Basically, the first half of it, they're going to do some westerns, and then move in and talk about Doctor Who, and they're just doing that because fuck it, we can. So,
but the latest episode they did 3 Gary Cooper westerns, which was great. I already linked that in the Facebook page, but I'll probably put it in the show notes as well.
They did Man of the West, The Hanging Tree, and
High Noon,
and they did that alongside The Gunfighters, which is a William Hartnell serial from 1966. I had obviously seen High Noon. I am in the middle of watching The Hanging Tree, and I haven't seen Man of the West, so I will probably talk about The Hanging Tree, Man of the West next week.
I think I might as well, because I haven't watched those ones either. I mean, everyone's seen High Noon, but at least everyone should have seen High Noon by now, you naughty little boys and girls, if you've not watched that film.
I've been invited to come on to Pex Lives and talk about Westerns at some point in the next couple months, so, Well, I kind of forced my way into that. I'm like, you guys talking about Westerns? Hey, I can talk about this. I've got lots of ideas for Westerns. So I badgered them, and they've agreed to let me come back on. So
nice.
The power of persuasion, the power of just pestering people.
I love how Jack Graham just sort of subtly gets invited into podcasts, and you just bully your way into them. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. Well, Jack is like really clever and insightful, and like people actually want him on their podcasts. And so when he like says, "Hey, I've actually got this idea," and I'm like, "Yes, please come on." Me, I more have to like poke people.
You're like the slobbish fucking uncle who shows up in the National Lampoon Vacation movies. Who just ingratiates
I'm
himself.
Randy Quaid.
You're Randy Quaid
in Christmas Vacation. My God. And when I leave your podcast, I do say shitter's full. That's
You're Randy Quaid. You're gonna hang out in a hotel and talk about how the Hollywood system is trying to kill you and stuff. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, no, that's exactly that's my meat and potatoes, man.
Yeah, awesome. A couple things I saw. I'll mention. First thing I'll mention is I finally broke down and watched. Well, I won't say broke down. It's not like I was avoiding this film, but I watched The Book of Eli from quite a few years ago now, I guess. Denzel Washington, Gary Oldman.
Denzel Washington walks around a Fallout 3 wasteland.
Yes.
That kind of, that was the first film where I saw the trailer and went, yeah, that was totally ripped off Fallout 3. Yeah. I apologize. I haven't seen the film, so please continue.
I won't say it's ripped off from Fallout so much as it's ripped off from The Road. I think The Road came before that one. Don't fucking quote me on that. But goddamn, so much potential for that film, and it's totally wasted on this fucking. And I guess I'll apologize to anyone who's listening to this podcast who is religious or whatever, but just this bullshit Christian message. So ham-fisted, annoying as fuck, just basically pounded into you. This is what the Left Behind people who did the Left Behind films, if they had a budget and actually talented people producing their movies, this is what that movie would be, kind of.
Did you see the Nick Cage Left Behind?
I haven't.
I've seen the Kirk Cameron Left Behind?
I have.
Can we please do a Left Behind episode?
Let's do it. Let's put that on the list. Left Behind. Let's do it.
All right. Left Behind, at least the first 2 movies. They're all on YouTube. So it's
Okay, it's set in stone. Left Behind. We're gonna do Left Behind at some point. But God damn it, this film has so much fucking potential, and it's just wasted on this ham-fisted bullshit message that. It's disgusting. There's so many great actors, and the film, the production, and everything is so fucking good. Like, this is The Road basically turned into slightly more Mad Max kind of action to a certain degree, and that is potentially really interesting and awesome, and it's just all wasted on this. Oh, we have to shoehorn in this weird... fucking bullshit Christian message that is just it doesn't work. I mean, I think even most mainstream Christians would kind of find this kind of trite and stupid, honestly. And it's really unfortunate because there's a lot of really great acting talent in this, and there's a lot of really good gritty scenes in this, and it looks really well, even though the color palette in this film is akin to fucking the guy who does 300 or whatever. What's his name? Zack.
Oh, Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder, like.
Well, that's just kind of what movies that's just what movies looked like in like 2009 or whatever year that came. Like it's just sort of like that sort of idea of we're gonna wash everything out. Everything kind of looks like gray and blue, and like it's just that sort of like it was that era of big budget filmmaking.
But has that really ended? Because Ridley Scott is still fucking doing it, man. Every film he's made in the last 10 years has been washed out of color.
So here's your problem. You're still watching films made by Ridley Scott. So I've avoided everything Ridley Scott. You want to know what the last Ridley Scott film I saw was?
Okay.
Would you like to guess?
Yeah. Jesus. I don't even know. Go ahead. Just say it.
Matchstick Men. That's the last Ridley Scott film I saw. Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel very satisfied in that decision. Like I'm like, you know what? I liked Matchstick Men.
Yeah, I did too.
And I feel like this is I'm okay with not watching any more Ridley Scott films. Like nothing that I've seen. I've heard what is it? Children of Heaven? Is that the one that's supposed to be really good?
I never heard it was good.
Okay. Well, I heard nice things about Children of Heaven, and I'm just I don't care. I'm fine. I'm done with Ridley Scott. Like the second that Robin Hood that the Sheriff from Nottingham movie got turned into Robin Hood. The second that happened was the second where I knew, like, I no longer... Ridley Scott is a great visual director when he gives a shit, The man has no, like, concept of script, which is the whole problem why I got to shit on Blade Runner for, 15 minutes in our last episode. This is why. He doesn't understand scripting. And he doesn't, he's a visual director. That's fine. He knows how to make pretty pictures. He doesn't necessarily know how to put them together into a coherent
He doesn't do that anymore. There's no color in his fucking films anymore.
There's nothing. But I guess what I'm saying, it's almost like that. Like, it's like his brother, Tony Scott, right? Tony Scott's, also worked with Denzel Washington on, what's that film? Man on Fire?
Yeah.
Man on Fire is a really fucking good film. Like, I actually really like Man on Fire. And then he did that same fucking thing until he died. You know? We are not even going to talk about Slither tonight, are we?
We are. We're going to get there. Don't believe in it, sir. Believe in it. So, fuck that film. I won't say fuck it. I'd say watch it, but it's not good. It's not good.
Okay, since we're talking about Christian movies, can I tell you about the worst film I've ever seen?
Okay.
It's called Time Changer.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was streaming somewhere, like I'll seek it out. I would recommend we actually do this on the.
Okay.
So I actually rented this from Netflix on a disc back when I was doing that, like years and years ago, because like it sounded so absurd, and I just had to. I was like really obsessed with like understanding the products of Christian fundamentalist like pop culture, and I was like, this just sounds like something I have to see. So there's this Christian, like, liberal theologian, I put that in quotes, in the 19th century, right? Like, so late 19th century, who finds that he is, there's this scientist who's developed a time machine, and so he travels forward to his future, which is our present day, like 2005 or whatever, and he's basically a cut-rate Will Ferrell character, walking around in like modern day, like 21st century Earth, like United States, and has the most asinine set of misadventures you could ever imagine. And the end of the film, basically he goes back to 19th century, determines that no, really what happens is the Bible, time can change, but the Bible has to remain constant. We have to always believe in the Bible.
Of course.
And the scientist says, I'm going to send somebody forward a few years after I sent him, but then, like, the time machine doesn't work because the rapture happened. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's always a problem.
Yeah. It's a terrible, terrible film, and my description in no way made it up to you. But I would absolutely do some of these Christian fundamentalist films at some point.
That has to be a month. That has to be a series.
They are universally terrible. I mean, have you sat in and watched some of these? Some of them are on Netflix. I watched the first 10 minutes of The Look of Silence and went, what the fuck is this? Christians are like being like overtly persecuted by like shock troops, or like we're gonna burn your Bibles in the first like 6 minutes of the film.
the idea in Book of Eli that after the nuclear war, all the remaining Bibles, we're going to have to burn those fucking things because it happened.
For warmth.
Yeah, for warmth, probably. But yeah, let's do a shitty Christian film month. Like, we need to at least
after spaghetti westerns,
Yeah, we need to at least throw one Kevin Sorbo film in there at that point. God's Not Dead, or what the fuck.
God's Not Dead, yeah.
God damn it.
Oh, God, we're going to subject ourselves to so much bullshit. Hold on, I have to plot summarize these things?
Oh, yeah, good luck with that one. you brought that on yourself.
I did, didn't I? I really did.
You're gonna be
at least Spaghetti Western Month is going to be like an easy one. Grizzled old man walks into a bar, shoots people.
I don't know.
Well, the sex comedy month, we're gonna that'll be the easy one.
Yeah, that'll be your break. Yeah. The other film I watched that I'll mention is actually really good. This is on Netflix. It's called Hush, and it was released this year. I think it's a Netflix exclusive kind of thing. That was,
I haven't heard of this at all, so tell me about it.
This is exceptionally good. It is a home invasion / slasher movie kind of concept. It's about this young woman who's an author. She is deaf. She lives in this sort of isolated house in a rural area. She is, basically just going through her day-to-day stuff. She's trying to write a book. And all of a sudden this killer shows up who is this sadistic motherfucker in a mask who likes to play with his victims. So he is basically stalking her and playing with her outside of her house. And it's basically a game of wits where she has to outsmart him and outthink him and basically beat him and escape from her house. Exceptionally fucking well done. I was totally surprised by this. I basically listened to a review of this from the Land of the Creeps podcast, which basically do horror movies. Very good podcast, by the way. Otherwise, I would have just passed this up. I wouldn't have watched it at all on Netflix.
Right.
Because I just would have thought it was another piece of Netflix garbage horror movie or whatever that just got picked up. But fucking well done. Really focuses on her disability and how she copes with the real world, how she, functions as an adult human being as being deaf. Also focuses in on her being a writer, where she's this very logical, pragmatic person who thinks about a lot of different outcomes. And there's a section in this film where she thinks about those things as in relation to escaping from the killer. And the way the film presents it is very well done. And I was just really pleasantly surprised by this. The killer is incredibly fucking creepy and nasty, but believable. And the central performance from the lead actress, I don't have her name down here right now, but very fucking good, very believable. The film really builds a lot of tensions and suspense.
Did they actually pick a deaf actress, or is this a
no? She's not deaf, but she really plays it fucking well. Like,
sure.
I do know some people who are deaf, and she does a really good job. And it's awesome because at times you do get her internal monologue, like the voice she hears in her head, which is her mother's voice. And
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, talking to her. So everything she thinks vocally is in her mother's voice, basically, because she was not always deaf. She became deaf as a child due to meningitis. So there was a few years that she could actually hear. And I really love the fact that it kind of transcends the cliches of like, oh, bitch, don't go in the fucking room, or don't do this, do that. She does these things because she is deaf. Like, there's things that a normal person, probably like a person who could hear perfectly well, would not do, but because she's deaf, she will do certain things. And her failures and her triumphs are all sort of like organically grown out of the fact that her character is deaf. And
right.
I really appreciated that in this film. Like, there's a lot of really good thought in this, and it is one of the best horror films I've seen in the last 10 years, and it's one of the best films I've seen this year. So it's really good.
It sounds like something I need to look up. It really does speak to the idea that what makes a great film is often just the script. And I kind of say this a lot. A good script doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
And not really. Not on the scale of like a big budget movie, even a moderate budget movie. Like a good script is really just hire somebody and you give them the time to do what they need to do to really polish things, and you work on it, and you like work out the beats and like figure out what you're really trying to say. A good script doesn't, it's not like, oh, throw some CGI at it. You can throw all the effects, all the production value in the world at a shitty script, and it's just going to be a shitty script.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of like, I wish, like it feels like so obvious, and I know that like it is, like it's not like people aren't aware, like, oh, what we need is a good script, but people need to like recognize what a good script is. I think that script reading is almost the skill that we need to like among like production people and directors and that sort of thing, like understanding like what actually works and doesn't work in a script.
Yeah, well, they overthink it, and it's like, oh, we need to revise this, so then they hire like 3 or 4 more people to rewrite the fucking script. And it's like, oh, fuck. It's like,
which is also why low budget stuff is kind of more interesting, because even if like there are like kind of technical flaws, you're looking at something that kind of is didn't go through a huge drafting process, and so you get this sort of authentic voice sometimes,
Yeah, so. And this movie doesn't feel like it was fucked with. I mean, it is low budget, but there's no technical flaws. Like, this film looks really good. Like, it really looks really good. It's very claustrophobic, even though she's in this, like... she must have been a successful novelist, let's just put it that way, because her first book paid for this fucking house, and it's a big fucking house. It's a big, expansive house, but at the same time, it's very claustrophobic, so it's done very well.
Writers in movies always live the lives that writers of movies think that writers should have. Like, it's always aspirational, right? I'd like to see a writer in a movie like actually be like, I work 10-hour days, I slave over a typewriter, I write, terrible romance fiction, terrible sci-fi, terrible erotica, I put it out on Amazon, I make $25,000 a year. It's my life. I love it because it is what I do, but that's my life. That's the work of a working writer at this point, It's not like I write for an hour a day and sip wine. Like, that's not at all like what a writer actually does. So.
Yeah.
Clytus, I'm bored. What plaything can you offer me today?
An obscure body in the SK system, Your Majesty. The inhabitants refer to it as the planet Earth.
How peaceful it looks.
Most effective, Your Majesty. Will you destroy this Earth?
Destroy it utterly.
Send Rick and Danny in Wool Rocket Ajax.
So, just destroy it?
That's what Ming said. Don't you ever listen?
Well, there's no arguing with Ming.
Hail Ming. Wait! You see those transmissions on the Visua screen?
Crow? Nightmare on Elm Street?
Chud 2? Black Belt Jones?
Nightbreed?
What's a critter?
Oh, I've seen those things.
Flash? I guess we could wait a while before the destruction.
Yeah, and watch the movies.
And talk about them.
The Hail Ming Power Hour. Disobedience to Ming. For now.
You can find us at Legion Podcast.
You can find us on Facebook.
iTunes.
We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
At You know what? Just Google it for yourself.
Just Google it, you bastages.
Hail Ming.
Breaking 2? Electric Boogaloo?
Samurai Cop?
Army of Darkness?
Flashdance?
We might destroy the planet if it's Flashdance.
Movies need only 3 things. Badasses.
You tell me who you want done, and I'll do the hell out of it.
A chick with drive who don't take no jive.
Boobs.
Do you know that the female breast, known to be the source of life since Eve, can be deadly weapons?
And body counts.
body count. The mathematics of murder and menace.
The BB and BC podcast is your source for exploitation film discussion of B-movies. You can find the show on iTunes and Stitcher Radio by searching for BB and BC podcast. You can also listen to each episode directly from the show's website located at badassesboobsandbodycounts.com.
Let's go to work.
Looking for something different in your podcast library? Then why not check out the Podcast Under the Stairs? I'm the host Duncan McLeish, and joining me each week will be a special guest as we examine some classic, old school horror favourites, as well as some modern classics. That's not to say that we don't tackle some of the, let's say, more questionable entries into the horror genre. And if all that wasn't enough, we have a subset of shows called Baz v Horror, where our horror novice, the Baz, tackles horror in all shapes and forms to see who will come out victorious. So what are you waiting for? The show can be found at podcastunderthestairs.wordpress.com and on Stitcher and iTunes. The Podcast Under the Stairs is a proud member of Legion Podcast Network. This is Duncan McLeish from Under the Stairs, signing off.
I love it. I love it. The main. Yeah. Love it. Yeah. The main. The main. I love it.
All right, let's move on to our film for tonight, and we're going to be talking about Slither from 2006.
When you marry someone, you promise to love them forever.
Baby.
No matter how much they might change.
Brian? Baby, what happened to your face?
It's just a bee sting. From Universal Pictures
Tree is sick or something?
comes a film so shocking. We got a real problem here. So disgusting.
Don't let him in your mouth!
It will change the face of horror.
Marriage is a sacred For better or worse?
Much worse. Chick is hardcore.
Something's wrong with me.
Slither.
Directed and written by James Gunn, who you may know from Guardians of the Galaxy, of course. I knew him first from his Trauma stuff. He did some production and writing for a couple films. He was involved in Tromeo and Juliet and Terror Firmer, which are arguably kind of the sort of better latter-day Trauma films that have been done in the last little while. This is starring Nathan Fillion as Bill Party, Elizabeth Banks as Starla Grant, Greg Henry as Mayor Jack McReady, Michael Rooker as Grant, Tanya Soliner as Kylie Strutmeyer, Matria Fedor as Emily Strutmeyer, Don Thompson as Wally White, Brenda James as Brenda Gutierrez, Jenna Fisher as Shelby Cunningham, Jennifer Coping as Margaret Hooper, Hag Sutherland as Trevor Carpenter, and Amber Lee Bartlett as Jenna Strutmeyer. And I'll let you go to the synopsis there, Daniel.
The monster is here, and it is us. Oh, wait, my bad. The monster is here, and it's totally not fucking us. But it is going to invade our bodies with giant worms that make us insatiably hungry for meat, any meat, including roadkill and human, and will eventually take over every living creature on the planet. It all starts in a town called Wheelie, where local car dealer Grant, Michael Rooker, is out on a dalliance with a young woman named Brenda James, in the middle of the woods, despite being married to the lovely Starla, Elizabeth Banks, when he is attacked by an alien parasite that takes over his consciousness and gives him the overwhelming urge for meat. Starla notices that Grant's behavior becomes increasingly erratic as he slowly begins to turn into a slug-like monster. Meanwhile, we are introduced to Police Chief Bill Party, Nathan Fillion, who dated Starla years ago and who frankly still holds a bit of a flame for her. Don't we all? The plot follows a fairly predictable arc, as the relationship between the formerly philandering and now suffering from slug-like lycanthropy. Sorry. The plot...
That is a tongue twister. I can see it all.
You're leaving this in. I know. All right. I wrote this and knew I'd never be able to say
it. Syllable by syllable, Daniel. Let's go.
Yeah. The plot follows a fairly predictable arc, as the relationship between the formerly philandering and now suffering from slug-like lycanthropy, Grant and Starla deteriorates, frankly due to both sides of his nature as listed in the previous sentence. Things come to a head when Grant's mistress Brenda is found in a barn, so engorged with meat that she has become a sphere with a face, begging for animal parts to stuff down her maw, which sets off the extended series of action sequences which finish the film and include a town full of mind-controlled zombies, a possessed family begging their not-converted daughter to engage in family fun night, and an intelligent and rotting deer getting back at the hunting culture of the small town. Eventually, Starla and her new beau must confront her abusive and alien-infested husband, as she first attempts to use subterfuge, and his continued feeling for her to get inside his defenses, and then, when that fails, an improvised explosion using a propane tank. Apparently, all the film really needed was Hank Hill to sell the town a little bit of propane and propane accessories.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to prove that I can say the word lycanthropy as long as I'm not trying to say it in the midst of a multi-syllabled hyphenated word.
That was a bit much, and I applaud you for trooping through it. That was great.
Okay, I'm just all right. Now suffering from slug-like lycanthropy is the word I was trying to stumble over there. So my apologies to the listening audience for my horrifying unprofessionalism.
I don't think anyone's going to complain. Yeah, okay. I love this movie. This is a movie, and I'll say this right off the bat, being, a big-time horror movie fan and being a bit of a jaded, cynical horror movie fan who likes a lot of the stuff in the past and kind of shits on stuff that comes out in the now. I was a little hesitant by this because this is one of those films that drops so many fucking references to past horror films that if it was handled in a different way, I would just be just shitting all over this film. I'd be hating on it. But this film has a charm. It has kind of a magic to it that really works very well for me and just made me feel at home. And honestly, I loved every fucking thing about this film. It's one of my favorites of the last 10 or 20 years. So
wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you hold it in that high esteem. So tell me some of the, because I don't know that I necessarily got all the, I was kind of reading, I know Night of the Creeps and some other stuff are pretty strongly referenced, but are there things that I might not necessarily pick up on, or that other people might not, which references are you kind of thinking of as
well, they're
really in your face?
Well, there's a lot of subtle ones. Like you said,
obviously there's the trauma. There's the Toxic Avenger, on screen. Yeah.
There's a lot of small ones. Just the fact that the mayor is named McCready, and there's the McCready furniture store or hardware store or whatever, that goes right back to The Thing, because Kurt Russell's character is McCready in that, right?
Sure.
So that's one of the big ones. Night of the Creeps, as you mentioned, the Fred Dekker film Night of the Creeps, it also involves alien slugs taking over brains and turning people into zombies. You can even go back to David Cronenberg's Shivers, which is one of his early films, which is about alien slugs that turn people into sex-crazed zombies that fuck each other to death, basically.
Oh, this is a film I need to see.
Yeah. You look at the Grant creature. There's obvious references there to The Thing, because it's kind of a big blob thing that is incorporating different people into its biomass, basically. More obvious is Stuart Gordon's From Beyond, which the creature is a direct rip from, that's been acknowledged, and that's a film we should do at some point as well. Of course, there's also the invasion of the body snatchers element to this. It's very obvious.
Okay. Well, put all these on the list. I'm definitely interested, because I haven't seen a lot of these films, so I'm definitely down. I will say I really liked this film. Actually, this was one film that both Shayna and I brought to this marriage. We bought it independently before we got together, and so we actually own 2 DVD copies of this. It's one of those handful of films, and I could probably put together a list. That's an interesting list, actually. But I really liked it. I spent $10 on it at a used copy at a movie gallery, which also dates the film. Movie gallery was going out of business. I bought a bunch of cheap DVDs.
Yeah.
Rewatching it, I was kind of this is fun, but it didn't hold up for me quite as much. And I don't know if that's just an artifact of kind of watching it sober, as a, okay, I'm going to podcast this, so I kind of have to have things to say about it. I kind of diminished it to some degree in my mind, or if it was just sort of familiarity with it, just kind of I wasn't quite on it. I actually did watch it twice. I watched it the first time just kind of idly, and then we had 2 weeks, so then I just watched it this afternoon. Just threw it back on and enjoyed it. It's not that I didn't enjoy the film, but it wasn't one that I really just loved. I think for me, the Nathan Fillion is great. This is why we love Nathan Fillion, right? He's got this delivery for this kind of deadpan satirical stuff. That's just his line. I remember seeing this for the first time, and the line that he says, what the fuck was that? Which is such a he is able to both completely understate the line and be completely present in the moment at the same time. That Nathan Fillion guy, he's got charm to spare. This is one of
the movies that really turned me on to him, right? Before that, the only thing I'd seen him in was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I liked him in that too, because who the fuck is this guy? Like, he's really fucking good.
This was really the first thing. I mean, I knew him. I knew he was in Firefly, but I hadn't seen it at that point. This was the first thing I'd ever seen him in, and it's like, well, of course you're gonna love this guy. I mean, he's great. I mean, the season has run for. I think Castle has run for like 9 seasons or 25 seasons or something, based purely on the fact that Nathan Fillion, even in his can we say without meaning to fat shame at all here, in his chubby years, is still a enormously entertaining individual who just, I mean, he oozes charm. The whole cast is great in this.
Yeah,
Michael Rooker, another great line. Shannon and I used to just quote to each other. We just go meat. Michael Rooker is great. Shannon actually met Michael Rooker at a horror convention in Cleveland. I forget the name of the convention, but she was working it with a friend and got to meet him briefly. She worked. She was like manning the table for a couple of like people who were James Gunn, like the lower level James Gunn people. I forget exactly who they were, but so like kind of a third level connection to James Gunn sort of thing. And got to meet like Michael Rooker and Jason Mewes and some other people. Awesome. But this is Michael Rooker kind of at the kind of in the midst of the Walking Dead thing, and so he's just walking around in like hipster glasses and being like loved by everybody, and he's still like a really great guy, so. I wasn't there, but Shannon described it to me. So
that's awesome because Rooker is one of my favorites. I mean, I saw him back in Henry, the Portrait of a Serial Killer, of course. I mean, that's kind of.
I was in JFK for some reason. That's my go-to.
JFK as well. But I mean, Henry is kind of the touchstone for like my horror fan background, I guess. But yeah, Rooker's awesome. Like he's great.
Elizabeth Banks. I mean, obviously. It's fucking Elizabeth Banks.
I love her as an actor. Let's put it that way. But I'm not. I don't have the attraction that obviously you do. Is like just because she's physically or whatever. But
she's I found myself like now. So I'm a Southern boy. Like I grew up in the South, and so that was another kind of element where I found myself like, I mean, she's great. Like I'm not like, but I was a little bit distanced from that, which I found my whole, like, the whole aesthetic I found myself slightly distanced from. And it might be that I don't live in the South anymore.
It does have that small town, Southern kind of aesthetic to it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Right. It's very much, I mean, and it's playing with those ideas is kind of both playing with the genre tropes and kind of playing with the iconography of kind of what it is to be kind of in a small town, and satirizing some of the viewpoints. I mean, there's oh god, the bit at the end where the woman is like eating the flesh, and she's like, "You're a Republican." Yes, like it's such a like. My God, this is a little bit obvious. Thank you, James Gunn. I appreciate it. But it's such a brilliant moment. Like it's so.
It's so brief though, because I mean, in the mayor. By the way, the mayor is my favorite character. The McCready character,
Clark Gregg,
because he's such an unrepentant dickhead, and he
only drinks Mr. Pibb. So
he only drinks Mr. Pibb, and he is just perfect caricature of the Southern Republican dickhead asshole mayor in a town that is just there because there's no one better to replace him, basically, and just the idea. I mean, I guess I might even be looking deeper to this than even James Gunn intended, but this the kind of idea of him becoming basically the poor and underprivileged and having to eat other people. I kind of feel like there's definitely a point there somewhere that's kind of fun.
I feel like, and I think that this is I love Clark Gregg. I mean, he's kill me now, awesome. Kill me now, and then boom.
He doesn't even hesitate. He just shoots them. It's like honestly, it's not one of.
It's such a great Clark Gregg moment and an even better Nathan Fillion moment, and it's such like it's totally.
It's awesome because he doesn't like him. These people are in this small town, and they sell it so well that they're all like they all know each other. They all grew up together, and some of them they don't like each other, but they get along kind of like family in a way. But when it comes to the point where Nathan Fillion is put to the point where he needs to either decide save this guy or shoot him, he just fucking blows him away without hesitation. It's like that's my biggest laugh in the film.
it's a great moment. I mean, but then again, Lee, you and I are friends. We're great people. If you were in that situation, I would absolutely shoot you through the head because, like, there's no coming back from that. Like,
well, yeah, I would hope you would.
Yeah, I would hope you would do that for me as well. For me, I think that kind of what you put your finger on, and I mean, maybe this is again just kind of speaking to me. I feel like it's kind of got a lot of kind of touching on some stuff, some interesting ideas that it kind of fails to execute or it fails to really do anything with. And so I was kind of watching it and I'm like, what do I want to talk about with this? And I kind of realized I really just kind of want to bullshit with Lee and Paul about this. I don't want to go deep on this because the film isn't. I mean, it's probably the one big thing that I think is interesting is that it, you can kind of look at it as this like metaphor for the abusive husband, the monster in the bed sort of thing, and towards the end there's some really nice, not just character moments and kind of acting moments between Rooker, who has to wear this ridiculous prosthetic, and then Elizabeth Banks, who's, just great in that scene. But I mean, there is this kind of metaphor you could kind of draw out of it. But at the same time, the film isn't really about that. I mean, it's not really. I mean, it's kind of using that as a plot device more so than it's really trying to look at that. You know what I mean? But I think that's also James Gunn, and I'm not. That's not even really a criticism of the film. James Gunn is clever enough to be able to give you that hint of character, that hint of something that kind of grounds it in this kind of real world thing without losing the light touch. And I think that that's kind of the key to what like Guardians of the Galaxy was going to make $1 billion doing a few years down the line, is that ability to kind of like both kind of be emotionally resonant. And so it's not even necessarily a criticism. It's just kind of like, well, if I'm going to sit here and podcast and I kind of want to like find some of these bigger issues, then I'm like, fuck it. Like it doesn't, like they're not, it's not exploring that. So I'm not going to. Unless you got thoughts about it, maybe you do,
I will say you're right. Like it really doesn't dig into it too deep. I mean, it just sort of hints at it. I mean, the Grant character he's an asshole. He's a possessive kind of, he's that sort of husband who has the sort of trophy wife almost. Like he's a really possessive, semi-misogynist kind of guy.
Well, he's definitely kind of abusive to his wife. I mean, anybody who's like, when are you ever in the mood?
Yeah.
Kind of, that circumstances. I mean, I understand the impulse. Like, don't get me wrong, but to say it and then like not like apologize later or whatever, like that's just total dick move.
And he's presented this guy where eventually, and because Elizabeth Banks' character is kind of presented as this sort of other side of the tracks kind of character who got caught up in his his wealth and it's kind of hinted like I guess I get the impression that the Michael Rooker character was, in his youth, he was probably a jock at some point, and he was wealthy, and he's kind of the manly guy who kind of thinks really highly of himself as a manly guy. I eventually could see this relationship, if it went like 10 years further down the road, becoming abusive, like physically abusive. When Grant gets infected by this alien creature, it essentially takes him over, but it absorbs some of his deep down feelings for Starla. Like you get the impression that he does kind of love her, but
he absolutely loves her. Yeah. Like I completely. I mean, he's basically saying like, I'm going to take over the rest of the world. Like every living organism on the planet is going to be a part of me, but you, Starla, you're going to get to be separate because I love you. Again, it's sort of like it's there, and it's terrifying because I mean, can you imagine like your lover, your partner, becoming this monstrous thing, like who's already kind of an abusive dickhead, and then becomes this monstrous thing and can literally control everything in your existence and just wants to have you by his side or by their side, That's a terrifying idea, and the film really doesn't do much with it. And I think that's kind of, if I do have a disappointment with the film, and I'm not trying to shit on the film or say anything really negative about it, I think it is like you bring it up, but then you don't really execute it.
Yeah.
It's such a fun movie, right? Like, you know.
But I mean, it's interesting because the alien entity that basically takes over Rooker, like it is described as this entity that has jumped from planet to planet, and that's the Invasion of the Body Snatchers thing, where it goes from planet to planet, absorbs that planet, wipes out that planet, moves on to another planet. The original Invasion of Body Snatchers, the Pot of People, are emotionless drones that basically wipe out all emotion, all substance of personality, all individuality is gone. And this creature does do that to a certain extent, but it has encountered on Earth something it's never encountered on any other planet. It's absorbed an emotional context, a humanity that it's never seen before, apparently. And that is what is the biggest weakness for this creature, because it kind of brings up the actual love that Grant has for Starla.
Right.
And at the same time, it's interesting because it starts feeling those emotions and starts actually acting on them. And initially, Starla is kind of like interested because she's like, oh, he's starting to open up to me. He's actually starting to show his emotions.
We're actually having good sex again. That's great, yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was really great. Like, I really enjoyed that, and I liked that kind of twist on the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where...
And that is kind of the way that a lot of, like, sometimes abusive relationships work, where, I'll just, I'll use the gendered language it typically is. The dude, starts to, like, oh, I'm interested again, I'm trying this new thing, or I'm manipulating you, or I'm, whatever, and, like, I'm stepping out on you, and that makes me, feel like more more manly, and therefore I want to have sex some more, and then I'm giving you more attention, or I'm feeling bad about what I'm doing outside of my marriage, and so I'm having to, buy you things or whatever, and then lavishing you with extra attention, and then the other shoe drops, and it turns out, oh no, there was this, I mean, again, there is a metaphor there. Like you can't, like I was sitting and I was kind of looking at it, and I was like, yeah, you could read this into this.
Yeah.
But I feel like the film doesn't really do a lot with it, except it does. I will say, the creepiest stuff, the really effective horror stuff for me, is the moments of the other members of the kind of collective talking to Starla in Grant's voice. I think that's a really kind of creepy idea. The other really great horror stuff is just the fucking people eating meat stuff. Like, I the splatter stuff is a lot of fun. I really love this kind of play on the Romero films, actually, and the way that the people in the basement, for instance, so I mentioned that in the sequence before, they're sitting and they're eating meat, but they're not unintelligent. I think that's it sells this horror because it's like, I know what I'm doing, and I know I'm eating this disgusting, rotting thing, or I'm eating another person, or I'm eating roadkill. I'm like, but I can't stop myself. And I think that actually makes it even more kind of disgusting body horror than, something like Night of the Living Dead, where they're like ostensibly they're just dead people that just need to feed. The idea that they still have intelligence, that they're still able to hold on conversation, but just say, I'm so hungry, I can't stop doing this. And then also being able to feel like the stuff growing inside them, the worms growing inside them and stuff. Legitimately creepy. Like, I mean,
it's fucking horrifying. I mean, just the idea that they can't control themselves. Like, once they get taken over, they're just compelled to do this, and they're disgusted by it, and they realize they're disgusted by it, but they're still doing it. And then eventually they get to the point where, Grant can, the creature can talk through them anytime it feels like it. It can just take them over and basically use them as an extension of himself. And there's a really good balance, I think, in this film. I mean, talk as much as you will about, and I totally agree that it doesn't go too deep into sort of the central issues that it presents. But when you look on the surface of the balance between horror and comedy, there's some really horrific shit in this film, and there's some incredibly funny shit in this film at the same time.
Probably the best example of that is the Sphere Girl, Brenda. Where you kind of walk in, and there's do you own this DVD? I would assume you own this DVD.
Yes.
There's a feature on the DVD where they actually talk about the makeup, like how they were like design of that creature. And originally, it was going to be a lot more of a kind of just, a girl with a distended belly, kind of eating stuff, and then they kind of gradually went further and further, and then it's like, well, what do you want? Do you just want like a big sphere? And he's like, yeah, do a big sphere. And so they did a big sphere. even in close-ups, I mean, she almost just looks like a wall, you know? Like, when you first see the way it's shot and edited and the way it's lit and everything, you know, it's this horrific sequence. But then you realize it's a sphere with a face. Mm-hmm. And then she's like literally like bouncing around, like reaching out for the meat. But then you get the character moments where she's talking about how hungry she is. And then you get kind of what's going on inside, and you get kind of the pain that she's feeling, and you know, you get all this stuff all in one. And so it's not like, oh, there's like this kind of moment of broad comedy, and then like, oh, and then we're going to do something horrific. It's all built into the same like moments. And I think that's what makes the horror comedy element of it work. Mm-hmm. You don't get the sense that like, oh, and then we just use the humor to kind of like take you away from the horror for a minute, and then we give you something else horrific. It's all kind of one thing. You know? And I think that sequence perfectly exemplifies that.
And this works for me as horror, because the thing I look for horror films, like, I'm at the age where shit doesn't really scare me when I watch a horror film. Like, there's very few films that really sort of get me. For the most part, you're looking for stuff, whether it's I'm watching a film or reading a horror story. I want something that's going to unsettle me and make me feel uncomfortable. This film does a great job because it builds up its characters in the initial sort of half hour or so, where you get a feel for everybody, and you kind of like everybody in the cast because they all feel like these kind of small town people that you and I know. Like, I was watching these people, and I totally believe these would be people living in my fucking town, honestly. And
I mean, they're slightly satirically tinged, but I mean, you know, it doesn't feel like it's. They're certainly not kind of local yokels. You know, they're not like Cletus the slack-jawed yokels, sort of like, you know, just. They're tilted slightly towards the satirical, but they still feel like kind of recognizable people.
But when I see some of them, like, after they encounter the Brenda character all bloated and stuff, and then some of them start dying off, like, really fucking quickly, that bothered me, because I didn't want to see these characters die.
Well, Brenda herself is a really, like, tragic figure. I mean, because it's like, what did you do? I mean, she slept with this guy, and I mean, yeah, she knew he was married, and, you know, but she didn't deserve that. I mean, you know, like, and
she had a baby, and even in her bloated form, she was asking, "What about my baby? Is my baby okay?" And it's like, "Yeah, we took care of her." Yeah, and Brenda James is actually a Canadian actress that I like. I've seen her in other stuff. Like, she was in Brad Pitt's, I think, first movie, if not first horror movie, Cutting Class from the 1980s. She was in that as well. So
nicely done.
Yeah, so I like Brenda James. She's still fucking hot today. She's in her 50s and she's smoking. She's like Julianne Moore. Like, yeah, hot.
Nicely done. Jenna Fisher. Jenna Fisher's a lot of fun in this. I mean, she was married to James Gunn at the time. She only has a couple of scenes, and I mean, she definitely looks like Pam from The Office, who just kind of walked in. I mean, you know, she was definitely filming that at this time, and, you know, so it is kind of like, you know, same kind of character, but, you know, she's fun, and she gets that little, you know, blood on the face kind of horror shot, and so I like that. You know, it's nice. Yeah.
Well, I guess she wanted to be in a zombie movie, so she was like really excited to be on this. I guess when she got cast for it, you know. So
right.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the sequence with the girl in the tub, the worms kind of coming in?
I liked it. It reminds me, I think there's a couple other horror movie references to that as well. The biggest one it reminds me of is Nightmare on Elm Street with the claw coming out of the tub. I think it worked pretty well.
Yeah. No, to me, I kind of read that as like, oh, this is James Gunn proving he can make this sequence. You know, like it's not in a bad way. I mean, it feels very kind of like, oh, this is a movie this is a scene that's in horror movies, sort of. You know, like,
and that was one of the more horrific sequences as well in the film, because she gets out of the bathroom, she runs into her family being taken over, like especially the two young sisters being taken over by the slugs, and there's blood all over the fucking walls, and there's slugs running over the fucking walls. And she runs out of her house, and her dad comes out of the front door being taken over, and she gets in that car, and then they go around the car, the possessed version of her family.
The Family Fun Night line, which I love that line.
And you see Grant's sinister persona come out like in the creature. Like you really see the merger of the two personalities. Like you get the idea that maybe this creature was like the pod people invasion of the body snatchers in previous planets, where it didn't have to deal with these emotions and higher intelligence, where, you know, it was just taking things over unemotionally and moving on. Here it's like conflicted. So you see initially it's trying to trick her into coming out of the car and being with her family and stuff. And when she's not complying, it's like, you get out of there, bitch! Like, it gets really aggressive, right?
Well, there's a sense in which it's, like, easier if you can, like, convince the person to come out. Like, you know, it's just easier to deal with. It's less, like, kind of energy intensive, you know? And so there is this kind of, like, we're going to play the nice game at first, and then we're going to, you know, break through the glass. Yeah, I thought that sequence was really good, and then the girl could have very easily have become a brief exposition device, and then they kill her, but she lives to the end of the film, which I think is a really nice bit. In fact, she was one of the characters I liked the most, because she's kind of like, yeah, you guys are full of shit. Like, you know,
I love that part where it's like, she saves him from the deer, and he's like, you know, if we live to tell this story, I'm going to tell everyone I saved you from the deer, right? It's like, all right. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Fine.
And then
at the end, he says, you know, tell him about that deer. Tell him about the thing with the deer. Oh, yeah, deer attached.
Yeah, I saved her from a deer. Oh, really?
Saved him from a deer, yeah. Yeah, no, it's a you know, some nice character moments there. Yeah, it's such a fun little movie, and you know, it's I briefly touched on it, the sequence at the end where Elizabeth Banks is kind of approaching Michael Rooker. You know, and she kind of has the mirror, and she's got kind of put it in her panties, and you know, is gonna attack him. And the idea of, like, again, approaching the monster and that sort of thing, I think is like that. Whenever I think of this film, that's actually the sequence I think of, because it's such a kind of beautiful character. You know, I really like the way you've decorated the place, sweetie. You know, like that line is such a desperate attempt to, like, curry favor that it's but it reads as so realistic. You know, Elizabeth Banks is I've always kind of loved her as an actor. I think she's really she's got this real presence, and
that's that deep-seated that's that deep-seated aspect of Rooker's character, where he is this sort of regressed guy who is probably never, like, emotionally never gotten past being a 15-year-old. So, I mean, he's doing shit that a teenager would do if he's love-struck, right? You know, and obsessed over a girl.
Putting up the photos and, you know, all that sort of thing. And you can imagine this, like, slug-like creature, like, you know, having all the minions. I mean, and you know, one element, once he's got all the minions who are, like, able to, like, go and grab her and stuff, I mean, they'll like, take care of her. They're like
they're like combing her hair and shit,
pulling her hair. And, I mean, this idea that, like, you can never get away from this guy, I mean, that doesn't have, you know, in the age of, like, social media, like, harassment does not have any kind of resonance at all. It's almost like I wish this was made today, where you could, like, make that a little more explicit. But I really love that character moment. I really love the way that plays. And, I mean, I do think you've mentioned the invasion of the body snatchers a couple of times. And I think that, honestly, I think it's probably a good thing that the film doesn't do the invasion of the body snatchers, like who's an alien and who isn't, sort of thing. Like you never really get that. I mean, you know, except for Rooker himself, you know, but, you know, we know that something's happening, so it's not like, you know, oh, is he, you know, how are we? They don't play the ambiguity game with this. It's kind of like, you're either an alien or you're not, and there's never, like, a question, which I think is probably clever, but it does kind of lose that kind of central, like, kind of the conformers hiding among us sort of thing. You know, it never really plays with those kinds of ideas the way that, like,
the alien presence in this actually becomes a personality and becomes central instead of becoming an all-encompassing kind of just...
Which is interesting in that, you know, I mean, you can read it as kind of the alien is taking it, like, has never done this before. Yeah, or you could read it like this is kind of what happens. This is the process, you know. It's like, it kind of takes on whatever the aspect of the creature is that it's invading. But the idea of like this one person, Rooker's character Grant gains all this power, and then the way that he decides to use it, you know, and like all he did, fuck the rest of the world. All I care about is my wife, and obviously he's an abusive dickhead, and obviously we don't support his actions in the film, but there is a kind of emotional authenticity to that, and I like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think there's a lot of like you said, and like I agree, like there's a lot of stuff this film could touch on deeper, but I think for what is presented, it works really well. There's a lot of really cool things in this film that sort of set it apart from the sort of standard alien invasion kind of thing.
It's also I like 90 minutes long, right? I mean, this isn't. Yeah. I mean, it moves.
I like how James Gunn, who does not forget his trauma past, had Lloyd Kaufman in this in a brief scene as a town drunk. He has no lines in the film. Like, there's a feature on the actual DVD of him filming and his lines getting cut out and shit. But it's nice to see Lloyd in there. He's also in Guardians of the Galaxy, by the way, in the prison scene. He's Lloyd Kaufman.
Is he nice?
Yeah. And one thing I want to mention that I just sort of caught on to, when Grant initially attacks Brenda, like that scene, which is very rapey, like where the tentacles first come out of his body and go into her, it's almost like it kind of brought me back to like Hammer Dracula, where there was the idea of like it started out as rape, but it becomes this sort of weird consensual thing where the woman feels
it's that overriding consent through like mind control sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like which is totally rape. Like let's just be clear about that. But is also very much a you're right. I mean, so many of the supernatural stories kind of have that element to it, and I didn't quite think of it that way, but I mean that's almost like date rape drug, or like he applies with alcohol, sort of
because it's implied that he pumps his victims with something through those tubes, right?
Yeah,
so
and I mean it's not. I mean it's like explicit. I mean certainly by the end when he's like pumping Nathan Fillion full of alien semen, they're which spills out of his mouth like this. There's no subtext to this at all. We're just kind of
nothing at all. The budget for this was $15 million, but that's sort of half of the story because after the marketing for this, it was $29.5 million.
Oh, they spent a bunch on marketing, yeah.
Yeah, and
I remember the marketing for this being pretty hard to get away from. To some degree.
And like half of it was trying to present it as a comedy, and half of it was trying to present it as serious. And it kind of feels like maybe the audience was kind of deflated by that almost, because there really wasn't horror comedies at this time for quite a while. So
this was kind of in the doldrums. This was kind of after. I mean, really. Another film I saw like that I watched with Shane. I'll just mention it now. The Faculty. Kevin Anderson, which is very much kind of on that same like horror comedy kind of.
Oh, fuck. That movie does not age well for me. I
liked it for the performances. Like I kind of idly kind of sitting on my phone and just kind of like eyeing in the background sort of thing. But that was one that I actually really liked when I was 18 and I saw it, and I just kind of like it. I have an affection for it more than I liked it,
Yeah.
Mechanically it doesn't really work at all, but like on a kind of like Kevin Anderson kind of wrote the Kevin Anderson wrote the Scream movies? Yeah, who also wrote that? Kind of wrote Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and then The Faculty, and then like completely disappeared as far as I was concerned. Kind of he had his like 3 or 4 years of like relevance, and then basically had done it to death, and then that whole genre just died for a while. And so that was kind of bringing it back to some degree. So I understand it's kind of hard to market these things, especially like horror audiences. I mean, let's face it, a lot of these films are marketed to, teenagers who, haven't seen this before, in 2006, if you were 18 years old in 2006, you were 10 in 1998 when The Faculty came out. So you weren't necessarily like thinking back to like, oh, that movie that came out when I was a kid, not saying like that was the immediate antecedent. And they're certainly not thinking back to Night of the Creeps or whatever. So I don't know. Yeah. It's a genre that kind of relies on ignorance to some degree. And I think that's why you see so many shitty horror remakes. They're just made to make a quick buck. And this isn't. I think even though I don't necessarily like love this film the way I used to, I still really enjoy it. And it's clear that this is like very, very effectively made.
Yeah.
It's doing exactly what it's trying to do. I just wish it had a little bit more ambition. I think that's kind of my, you know.
Yeah, and its box office, unfortunately, was 12.8 million worldwide. So, you know, basically because of the fucking marketing budget, it really fucking sank. And I mean, that's kind of a weird thing. Like, you see, like, you look at an IMDb, a lot of the times it's like, oh, the budget was this, and then its gross was this. They never, hardly ever factor in the fucking marketing budget, which just... You know.
And for a modern movie, your marketing budget is usually like the size of your regular budget. Like, I mean, you literally, if you spend $15 million on the movie, you're going to spend $15 million on the marketing, and you know, so that is definitely an aspect. Although this movie was hugely successful on DVD and stuff, so I mean, I'm sure they made their money back eventually. You know,
I think this has potential to be like. John Carpenter's The Thing or something like that on DVD where, you know, like maybe 10 years from now it actually kind of becomes that kind of cult classic that everyone kind of reveres to a certain degree. Because I really like it. Like, I kind of hold that in that sort of regard, honestly. So I
think people are kind of seeing it as a minor cult classic. I think, especially if James Gunn keeps making kind of big budget films, I think we're going to see the way we see like Peter Jackson's early films. You know, like holy shit, the guy who made The Hobbit, you know, made Bad Taste. You know, like that's how we're going to see it to some degree. So.
So Daniel, give us your multitude of plugs now. Just
apparently. So. I have a bunch of podcasts. We started off talking about Doctor Who with my wife. It's alwayspaceman.com. We also do Red Dwarf. We're doing some Firefly, also starring Nathan Fillion. We've only done one episode of that so far, but we're working on it. And we have a Horror Thing Rock coming up with that's a Fourth Doctor Leela story, and I recorded that already. I just have to get that edited. That has a special guest who I think listeners to this podcast are going to like him. A guy named Kit Gonzo, who I haven't talked to you about this off Mike Lee. You can look this if you want. I basically invited him to come on the show, and once you hear him, you're going to love him. He appeared on Pex Lives a couple of months ago talking about Stephen King for a while. So
okay, I know him then. Okay.
Yeah. So no, he definitely wants to come on, and you know, I think our audience will like him. And as I mentioned before, my wife and I are kind of alternating weeks. It's basically her column, but I'm going to be filling in when she can't do it. And we're talking about sex and gender and media representation, all sorts of things over at RooterTormPress.com. And I'm sure there'll be a link in the show notes, and you can find us over there. And I just put up my first post today as we're recording this, talking about the Fourth Doctor and Leela in the context of a dominant-submissive relationship. So go check that out if that's something you're interested in. I've pitched an article which is talking about Blue Velvet, so we'll see if that gets written at some point. Kind of going into the details on selected scenes there, and I think I'm going to write that eventually. So go check all that out. I'm all over the place now. We're coming up in the world. They must be destroyed on site. You know, I'm dragging the podcast down in terms of quality, but up in terms of listeners, and that's why you keep me around. I know.
Hey, if we have to scrape from the bottom of the barrel, I'm all right with that. That's good. Yeah. All right, so if you want to find all of our stuff, of course, tmbdos.podbean.com. You can find all the links to stuff, but the best place to go, of course, is our Facebook page. They Must Be Destroyed on Site on Facebook. You can find all kinds of interesting people there talking about interesting stuff once in a while, and that's the best place to get in contact with us and leave comments and questions, which we respond to all the time. I mean, we get so few that we definitely respond to everything. So throw your voice in there. Be part of the conversation. We're definitely looking forward to that.
Yep. Tell me how much I suck. I really want to get a bunch of comments to tell me how terrible I am on this show. That's my...
And depending on how things go, the next episode might show up next week, and it will be Predator 2 and RoboCop 2.
I've been pushing for this one for a while. This is gonna be fun. I haven't seen Predator 2 in like 20 years, so we'll see. We'll see. I just know it's got Danny Glover, and it's in like future Los Angeles, 1997. And it's got like drug gangs and Bill Paxton and people hung from ceilings. That's all I remember about this film.
Yeah.
So
Bill Paxton.
RoboCop 2 I have a pretty good memory of. I watched that one a bunch as a kid. But Predator 2 I don't really remember. So I'm excited. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so until then, we're going to go out. I'm probably going to put a couple different songs in this. Definitely the one from the soundtrack is from the Yahoos, I guess. It's the ending song in the fucking goddamn movie anyway. I think it's I Love You or something like that, and
sure.
Leave Me the Fuck Alone or whatever the goddamn song is. You'll hear it. Fuck you people.
Whatever basically picks. I'm sure he picks something great. Go listen to it.
Yeah. So until then, guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Daniel, for joining me, and we're going to fuck off now.
We're fucking off. Bye. We're going to go fuck each other.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For past episodes, links to the host's other stuff, and links to podcasts and websites of similar interest, please visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. There you can also find links to us at iTunes and YouTube, as well as our Facebook group link, which is the best way to get in touch with us. We welcome all comments, questions, movie review suggestions, and criticisms, and we do our best to respond to everyone. You can also find us at Daniel's recently launched oispaceman.com, where you can find his sci-fi themed podcasts about Doctor Who and Red Dwarf. Thank you. Drive through.